Shalom, shalom. It's your boy OG, also known as Obadiah, representing the old family or whatnot. I want to give all praises and glory and honor to Yahweh, our Creator, the Most High. Y'all know who He is. But I'm making this video on the situation going on in South Africa or whatnot. Now, we know they're trying to get their land back. Well, not trying, but they're getting their land back. And Genesis 49 and 19 says that the tribe of Gad will overcome in the end. Like, they will be overtaken, but in the end they will overcome. And that's Genesis 49 and 19. And it reads, Gad, a troop, shall overcome him, but he shall overcome at the last. That's South Africa all day. You know what I'm saying? Prophecies being fulfilled. When I went to Africa, you know, they always looked at me as a big brother, you know, a big brother from America or whatnot, you know. And by us being the tribe of Judah, you know, we the leader of the pack or whatnot, you know. It was prophesied that we will rise up first. You know, we the leader of the pack. You know what I'm saying? So they give us respect on that too. Also, you know, the South Africans, they trying to unite with the African Americans. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, that should tell you something right there too. I mean, they got signs up saying, you know, bring back our people. You know, they got other signs saying we will defend ourselves by any means necessary. You know, and they talking about the so-called African American too. You know, I feel like they waking up, you know, slowly but surely. You know, we had to wake up first. You know, prophecy had to be fulfilled or whatnot. But I'm going to run this video or whatnot of the South Africans, you know, wanting to come together with the African Americans. And, you know, you can see for yourself or whatnot, you know. You might want to, you know, go back to the scriptures and do a little research on the South Africans, on the Ghanaians, you know, really all the African people, except the, you know, the Hamites or whatnot. You know, when I was in Africa, you know, I always asked them, like, you know, what's your nationality? And they would tell me a Ghanaian, and then, you know, well, I'll be like, well, you know, what is it according to the Bible? And, you know, they could never tell me. But I asked them, you know, what they'll tell me they're from a tribe, Ashanti, Ga, something like that. And, you know, they'll tell me that they don't know. They just know they're from this tribe or whatnot. You know, and we know with the 12 tribes, it was other tribes or whatnot that was later named, that later had different names or whatnot. But just, you know, want to show you this video, and, you know, you can leave a comment or anything like that or whatnot, you know, leave your opinions or whatnot, your beliefs also. But I truly believe that South Africa is a tribe of God. And I also truly believe that the northern tribe is residing in Africa. I believe that the Negro Mexicans, the Latino Mexicans, the Argentinian Negro, the North American Negro. I believe that all of those people or nationalities or whatnot are of the southern tribe, the tribe of Judah. I really do. But enjoy the video or whatnot. You know, tell me what you think about it. And I'll be back for the next video that I'll be presenting. All right.
Supporters of the Black Lives Matter action vow to protect the lives of black people at all costs. A group of young people held a night vigil in Khayelitsha in support of U.S. citizens. They demanded better treatment for the black community in the U.S. The vigil comes after the fatal shooting of 2 young men last week in the United States.
We will not tolerate the killing of black people in America or anywhere else in the world. And we have become aware now that the world we live in has become anti-black. Black people continue to suffer in the hands of the police. And so we are not going to sit down. Black people will have to take up the responsibility to defend themselves. And that is not something that is outside of the law. Every man and every woman in this world owes it to themselves to defend themselves from the attack and the onslaught that is perpetrated against them.
United against the atrocities on the black community of United States. This is a night vigil in Cape Town, the venue aptly declared a blacks-only area. Under the Black Lives Matter flag, Cape Town stood in solidarity. Members from the Fees Must Fall movement too joined the campaign.
Being a person who was there during Fees Must Fall and experienced police brutality and seen all of this, it is but natural but to take part and be part of a solidarity campaign against violence against black people, because violence against black people happens whether you're a black student, whether you're a black person in America, whether you're a black person in Africa.
They don't like us because they think that will rob them. Maybe we'll rob them because we are poor. They make us their slaves because we are poor. We don't afford. So that's not good.
Strong views were shared over the killing of police officers in Dallas last week.
It is godly to defend yourself from perpetual, insistent assault on you and on your family.
The Black Lives Matter campaign has broadened the canvas for the debate on the issue. But the question remains whether an eye for an eye is the real solution to the crisis. Kevin Brandt, ANN7, Cape Town.
Members representing the Black Solidarity in South Africa held a demonstration on Wednesday in support of the Black Lives Matter at the U.S. Embassy in Cape Town. The protesters were pushing for an end to police brutality against blacks in the United States of America. A similar demonstration against police brutality in Dallas was marked by death of 5 white police officers shot by a sniper over the death of 2 African Americans killed by police in Louisiana and Minnesota.
The BFC as a collective stands with all oppressed black people internationally and sees the violence perpetuated against black people in America as a direct attack on black people universally.
Since the beginning of the year 2016, more than 500 people have been killed by police in the United States, and the African Americans, who represent only 13% of the population, constitute more than 30% of the killed.
The Black Solidarity Action community demands the immediate withdrawal by the United States of America from South Africa. In 2015, statistics show that almost 2 black people died every week in the United States due to police brutality. Other sources have found that in the U.S., a black person is murdered by police every 28 hours. In the context of black oppression is further clarified when we note that there are more black people in prison today than there were slaves in 1850. The USA government has maintained the anti-black racist state that continues to see black people oppressed and enslaved within the white supremacist capitalist patriarchal society. Taking guidance from black consciousness, the BSC as a collective, stands with all oppressed black people internationally and sees the violence perpetuated against black people in America as a direct attack on black people universally. Black Solidarity Action notes that following the murder of Brother Micah X. Johnson, at least 4 persons were arrested for supporting this revolutionary, uncompromising response to the American police's attack on black life, and others are being targeted and declared terrorists for doing the same thing. American white colonizers, however, are the true terrorists and land thieves. Black Solidarity Action further calls for the immediate release of the 4 arrested in relation to revolutionary Micah Johnson and the decriminalization of his supporters. Black Solidarity Action commends the black community internationally for its principled commitment to black liberation, calls on all to draw from the revolutionary response of Brother Micah X. Johnson and respond to the anti-black racist oppression by ending the world as we know it. Finally, the Black Solidarity Action community demands that the United States of America withdraws from South Africa until it stops killing black people in its own nation and across the globe. Izolete. Africa. Ingululeko.
All right, shalom, shalom, shalom. All praises and glory and honor to Yahweh. Y'all know who he is. Again, the Most High, the creator of this earth that we on. But this next video is about Tucker Carlson. He's I guess an anchor man from Fox News or whatever. But he said some pretty interesting things about, the people in South Africa, the white people in South Africa, is getting their land took for the color of their skin. And that's ridiculous, man. I mean, how could you say that in 2018, man? It's crazy. But, he was using a lot of big words or whatnot, you know what I'm saying, that don't mean nothing, but you reap what you sow. That's what the Bible say, What you give is what you get. You steal somebody's land, they're going to steal your land, flat out. Chickens coming home to roost. My advice would be to just get the hell out of there. Just get out. Go somewhere else. It's not your land. Just like America's not your land or whatnot. And y'all gonna have to pay. Y'all got to pay. Judgment is coming. It's coming swiftly too. But just to inform my Hebrew Israelite brothers and sisters or whatnot about what's going on, what I'm looking at, what I believe in or whatnot. It's bothering me how, my Hebrew-like brothers and sisters are calling their brothers and sisters Hamites or whatnot. Without even, doing any kind of research or having any kind of evidence, that say they're Hamites. So, I don't really want to drag this video on or whatnot, but, just take a look at this video. Tell me what y'all think.
We've got an exclusive investigation for you tonight. The president of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, has begun, and you may have seen this in the press, seizing land from his own citizens without compensation because they are the wrong skin color. That is literally the definition of racism. Racism is what our elites say they dislike most. Donald Trump is a racist, they say. But they paid no attention to this at all. In fact, Ramaphosa is one of Barack Obama's favorite leaders in the world. In a speech just a few weeks ago, Obama praised him. He praised the racist government of South Africa and Ramaphosa by name for, quote, inspiring hope throughout the country. Does our current bureaucratic elite agree with that? Apparently they do. We called over to the State Department for comment on South Africa's land seizures which should be getting worldwide attention because they are immoral but are getting basically none. And the State Department replied with what is honestly an unbelievable statement. We're going to quote it for you at length. Here it is, quote, "We are aware of these reports and have been following this issue very closely for some time. South Africa is a strong democracy with resilient institutions, including a free press and an independent judiciary. South Africans are grappling with the difficult issue of land reform through an open process, including public hearings, broad-based consultations, and active civil society engagement. President Ramaphosa has pledged that the land reform process will follow the rule of law and its implementation will not adversely affect economic growth, agricultural production, or food security." End quote. State Department did not mention that by following the rule of law, he has changed the country's constitution to make it possible to steal land from people because they are the wrong skin color. In other words, nothing to see here, says Mike Pompeo's State Department. It's totally okay for South Africa to steal property for racist reasons because they are, quote, a strong democracy and held, quote, public hearings. Criminals, take note, find a buddy, start robbing State Department employees on their way to work. By their logic, as long as you outnumber them, they'll be okay with getting robbed because it's democracy. Marian Tupy is from South Africa. He spent a lot of time studying that country and the region. He now works at the Center for Global Liberty and Prosperity at the Cato Institute. We talked to him about this recently. Here's our conversation. I thought the whole point of the new South Africa and the reason the rest of us were excited to see it in 1994 take shape is because it rejected racial discrimination. And yet the government is now embracing it. Or am I missing something?
No. In a free and civilized society, we don't take people's stuff on the basis of the color of their skin. It was wrong when it took place under apartheid. It is wrong now. And it would be a tragedy if South Africa were to repeat the same mistakes it did in the past.
So there are really two levels here. First is the moral level, and you and I are in agreement that it's always wrong to punish people for what they look like. But second is the effect that it will have. We saw something similar to this happen in neighboring Zimbabwe. What happened when land was seized there on the basis of skin color?
18 years ago, the governing party of Zimbabwe, ZANU-PF, was threatened with electoral loss. And in order to shore up its support amongst the electorate, it decided to expropriate the farmers of Zimbabwe. What that led to, aside from horrific violence, was a total economic collapse of the country. Half a century of economic growth was wiped out in Zimbabwe as a result of this particular policy. The country experienced hyperinflation and had to abandon its currency. The country's unemployment rate was roughly 90%. Life expectancy plummeted. Child mortality increased. And, of course, the agricultural production has collapsed and hunger ensued.
So the Western media, particularly the media of the United States, has resolutely ignored this. This didn't just happen today. This has been unfolding over a period of years. The Trump administration has not weighed in on this. How should the U.S. administration respond to this human rights tragedy that we're watching unfold?
Well, the first thing that needs to be made clear is to denounce the policy. The administration needs to make it very clear that it is both immoral, because it targets a specific group of people, and I thought we were beyond that. And secondly, that it would be economically destructive. So we need to make it very clear where we stand. Secondly, South African government needs to be aware that the law, the African Growth and Opportunity Act, under which South Africa trades with the United States, requires the President of the United States to expel countries from AGOA that do not respect property rights and due process. So South African government needs to be aware that if it changes the constitution and legalizes what is essentially theft of private property, it will be kicked out of AGOA, and further negative economic consequences will ensue.
Why would former President Barack Obama, just several weeks ago, publicly praise a racist like Cyril Ramaphosa? Why would he do that?
A lot of people hope that Cyril Ramaphosa is playing some sort of a three-dimensional chess, that he's just trying to appease the far left of his political party and the far left in the country. But ultimately, he doesn't really believe in what he explicitly says he believes. Cyril Ramaphosa has said that by expropriating the farmland, the privately owned farmland in South Africa, he's going to create the Garden of Eden in South Africa. He's going to turn South Africa into hell, just like Zimbabwe is a complete catastrophe. And so Barack Obama should pick up the phone, call Cyril Ramaphosa, and tell him that if he wants to continue to enjoy the good press he's been having, he needs to reverse policy that he is set on and behave in accordance with normal rules that define and characterize free countries.
Yeah, I wish he'd said that in public when he had the chance, but of course he didn't, being a coward. Marion, thank you very much for your deep knowledge on this subject. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
All right, I'm back. I really ain't got to say nothing about Trump. He can't stop Bible prophecy. It's like I said, God will overcome in the end, in the latter days. But just throwing up a video to let y'all see what they're talking about as far as Trump trying to intervene with the taking back of the lands in South Africa.
President Trump says he asked Secretary of State Mike Pompeo to investigate land seizures and farmer killings in South Africa. Now, last night, he cited Fox News host Tucker Carlson in a tweet after watching a segment on the issue. The president quoted Carlson saying the South African government is now seizing land from white farmers. He also cited the, quote, large-scale killing of farmers.
South Africa's government fired back at the president, saying it, quote, totally rejects this narrow perception, which only seeks to divide our nation and remind us of our colonial past. Well, the government went on to say it will speed up the pace of land reform in a careful and inclusive manner. So for more on this now, we want to bring in CBS News foreign correspondent Deborah Pata. She's with us now on the phone from Istanbul. So, Deborah, you've been following this story very closely, obviously. You live in South Africa. Can you first explain what exactly the land seizure policy is and where it has come from?
Well, it is true that President Cyril Ramaphosa, South Africa's president, has said that he wants to speed up land reform in South Africa to right what essentially he says is a grave historical injustice against black South Africans. Even after apartheid's end in 1994, 24 years later, the white community, which makes up about 8% of South Africa's population, still owns 72% of farms, compared to roughly about 4% in the hands of black South Africans. And this, Cyril Ramaphosa says, is wrong, and so they want to speed up land reform. And a few weeks ago, he announced the plans of his party and the policy of the African National Congress, saying that he would push ahead to try and amend the South African Constitution to allow for land expropriation without compensation.
So, Deborah, take us through the fact and the fiction of President Trump's tweet and the reporting that he's citing from Fox News on these farmland seizures and the large-scale killing of farmers, and specifically the president in his tweet mentioned white farmers.
Well, that's where we get into a mess regarding the story. First of all, President Trump has conflated two issues, the one being land seizures and the other being the killing of so-called white farmers in South Africa. Land seizures have not begun in South Africa. As I mentioned, this is an issue that Cyril Ramaphosa has to take to Parliament. He needs a two-thirds majority to change the Constitution. The ANC does not have a two-thirds majority in South Africa. It would need the support of another party, and even if it were to happen, it would probably go through a series of legal challenges and finally end up in the Constitutional Court. So that cannot happen for some time to come. the president based his tweet on a report on Fox News by Tucker Carlson, who said that the land seizures has begun. As I said, that has not happened. He also said that there was large-scale killing of white farmers. It's referred to by white right-wing organizations in South Africa as the white genocide. But the facts simply do not bear this out. In fact, the killing of farmers in South Africa has decreased since its peak, which was probably in 1998. I think in the last year it was just about 40 farmers that were killed. And when they refer to farm killings, it covers everybody on a farm. White farmers, black farm workers, domestic abuse. There's no sort of differentiation there. But this is not an issue where white farmers are being targeted because of their race, because criminals want to steal their land. It is part of a problem in South Africa, which does have a high crime rate. So to actually conflate it, A, with land seizures, it has nothing to do, and B, as an issue against white South Africans, is simply and blatantly untrue. And I think that is what a lot of people are objecting to, that first of all, this Fox News report has come out with something which actually, if a report like that was done by a local broadcaster in South Africa, could well be taken before the Broadcast Complaints Commission because it is factually not true. And then secondly, the president's tweet, which repeated the misinformation and then conflated two issues which have absolutely nothing to do with each other and in the statistics. The statistics do not bear out this issue that white farmers are deliberately being targeted because of their race. This is a narrative being perpetuated by white right-wing organizations in South Africa.
So let's talk a little bit about at least one right-wing organization that we've talked about that's sort of capitalizing on this, calling this a white genocide. What's going on in the country that they're sort of pushing this narrative even without any evidence?
It's been going on for some time now that there's this deliberate targeting of white farmers. And it's kind of one way in which the right-wing organizers in South Africa, in fact, this group AfriForum, actually went on a tour of America a couple of months ago where they visited a lot of organizations to try and push this narrative. And in fact, amongst the targeted people they visited was none other than Tucker Carlson of Fox News and also the Cato Institute, a representative that was interviewed on the Fox News program, and a number of other institutions which they based their, position on and which they wanted to try and push this agenda. To say that farm murders are significantly higher than any other crime in South Africa, as I've already said, is simply untrue. It's a way of pushing their narrative. There are still South Africans who don't support a black government in South Africa. Racism, even though it is outlawed now in South Africa, does still exist. Does there need to be a conversation about land in South Africa? Absolutely. 24 years in, there needs to be a discussion about how land is shared in South Africa. But the way this organization, AfriForum, has gone about it is not one that is supported widely in South Africa. The issue of land reform is a very, very divisive issue. There is nothing that sets tongues and hearts aflame in South Africa. People get very passionate when they talk about it. But we also have to bear in mind there is an election in South Africa next year. This is an election issue, and Cyril Ramaphosa needs to win big because the ANC has suffered a lot of damage after nearly a decade of corrupt rule under former President Zuma. And this is one issue which touches the hearts of black South Africans and could get him support. But at the moment, it's an issue on paper.
Yeah, and Deborah, finally, I guess, it's just surprising, I think, and interesting why Fox News would actually choose to focus on South Africa. Out of all the 54 countries on the continent, all the issues that are facing Africa, and that the President of the United States would then suggest to the Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, that he look into a sovereign nation's internal issues. And we just threw up a tweet, and I just want to give the context of that tweet. We had a tweet from Patrick Gaspard. He's the former U.S. ambassador to South Africa under President Obama, and he tweeted this: "The President of the United States needs political distractions to turn our gaze away from his criminal cabal, and so he's attacking South Africa with the disproven racial myth of large-scale killings of farmers. This man has never visited the continent and has no discernible Africa policy." In South Africa, Deborah, is there a sense from the government and from just Main Street South Africans that the United States has any kind of policy towards the country other than the status quo?
No, and I think there's a lot of frustration because Trump has made very disparaging remarks about Africa in the past, including South Africa. And so I think there is a lot of ill will in terms of how America views South Africa. The South African government has responded saying that they will take this up through diplomatic channels, but this is based on misinformation. And a lot of South Africans who are quite well informed about international affairs say it's an interesting week for President Trump to try and change the national dialogue. You know, in a week when you have so many issues affecting the White House, perhaps what many commentators are saying is the worst week for the Trump White House, he chooses to focus on another issue and try and change the national dialogue. It doesn't seem to be working, as Gaspard's tweet would indicate.
And we should point out that although the president, to my knowledge, has never visited the continent of Africa, his wife, the First Lady Melania Trump, is going to be taking her first solo trip in October.
Do we know if she'll go to South Africa?
I don't know. I don't know what the
countries.
agenda is. Deborah will probably be, tracking the First Lady's movements when she does make that trip. But again, let's remember the president called other countries in South Africa S-hole countries. And so it is interesting that the First Lady has chosen her first solo trip to be on the continent.
Okay, I'm back again. Now this last videos is dancers out of Africa, South Africa, Ghana, Nigeria, all these, different spots in Africa or whatnot. And, we talk about being the salt of the earth or whatnot. The people over in Africa, South Africa, Ghana, all around Africa or whatnot, they're the salt of the earth too. I realized that we get a lot of our dances or whatnot from the African people or whatnot. So I'm just saying, we got to really study and know what we're talking about when we're talking about, the people in Africa are Hamites or whatnot. And, this 12 tribe chart. I mean, I'm not with it. I finally come to the conclusion that I don't think it's right. My spirit is telling me it's not right. But you hear a lot of Israelites saying, well, you make a chart or whatnot, with your chart. So, I made a chart, I got my son on the chart or whatnot, but it's, you take a look at it or whatnot, feel free to comment. But these dances, I want y'all to see these dances, though. They're real good, too. But with that, I'm going to leave y'all with Shalom. Bonsam.
Happy Zawunim zawubati bibini ya eni eti muza rakaze. Ese wara. Ya magoni munyadi na ubianti na weni jesu. Anyeshe mami ya wanimu kwa katoni diano. Anisa wenya garebi, ana wachi ya branti bia. Na jombo ebi, ana jonge ebi ya beseno. Eno sanu wa wasam kaya dimba, ezikase. Se jonge ebi ya sino, jombo ebi ya kuto. Se jonge ebi ya sino, jombo ebi ya gano. Eya gonko, so wati asiye. Agi. Wabanize wabebumu, asumwe bidibi. Enda uba mobua, kase unyotina. Wachia wa baby, na wajiri namba. Na udu bienu, ukaya ngo. Baby aya uzete, kase jenga weniswa. I see the way mommy, miss the watching. Why would you live in you? That's a wood and as I know. I'm quite over I can't walk down and move. But I would have been a miss a man. To say, don't show me down. But you need me, damn, I can't see my hair,